My own 3 kids sat me down with a lawyer to have me declared senile so they could take the house, the land, and every dollar I'd saved in 49 years. And by the time that lawyer finished his little speech, they'd already lost all of it and didn't even know it yet. Now, before I get into the whole thing, let me just say I'm real glad you're here sitting with me tonight. It means something at my age. Do an old man one small favor, would you? Put the name of your town down there in the comments so I can read it out and send a little hello your way. And if the story turns out worth your while, go on and tap that like and hit the subscribe. That's the honest truth of what keeps me sitting here talking to you folks. So, where do I even start with a thing like this? My name's Ray. I'm 78 years old, and I live out on Old Honeycutt Road, just south of Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina, in the same house my daddy built with his own 2 hands back in 1951. 11 acres. Used to be nothing but tobacco and pine out this way. And now, Lord, every field around me's got a sign stuck in it. 400 houses going up where the Pope place used to be. A Sheets sitting where I bought my first fishing license as a boy. The whole world moved in around this old house while I wasn't paying attention. I ran cobble hardware on Main Street for 40 years. If you needed a particular size wood screw anywhere between 1970 and 2010, I'm the man you came and saw. Sold the store in '09 to a young couple. Did all right on the deal. Put the money away and didn't touch it. I'm not a fancy man. I drive a 2006 Silverado with 190,000 miles on it, and I intend to drive it till one of us gives out. My wife was Eleanor, Ellie. Married her in 1973 at the little Baptist church over on Academy Street, and she was mine for 49 years. And then 2 Octobers ago, the cancer took her in about 5 months, start to finish. And I have not had one single morning since where I didn't reach over to her side of the bed, first thing like some kind of fool. We had 3 children, and I want to be fair to them here at the start, because a man telling a story like this one, you gotta watch yourself. You can make yourself out the saint real easy. I wasn't a perfect daddy. I worked too much. I missed ball games and recitals, but I never once, not a single time, made those 3 wonder if they were loved or if they'd have a roof over their heads. Hold on to that as I go, because it matters later. Gary's the oldest, 52. He's got a heating and air company over in Garner, Triangle Comfort. And for years he strutted around like he was some kind of big man. Big lifted truck. A base boat he never once put in the water. A house in one of those subdivisions with a fake stone glued on the front. Denise is the middle one, 49, lives out toward Angier, married to a fella named Steve, who I've maybe traded 40 words with in 20 years. And Kyle, my baby, he's 45, and he's, well, Kyle never could get his feet under him. Jobs come and go. Money comes and goes a whole lot faster than the jobs do. When Ellie passed, they came around thick at first. Casseroles, phone calls every night, you eating daddy, you sleeping daddy. And I lapped it up. I'll be honest with you, because I was so lonesome rattling around this house, I'd have carried on a conversation with the mailbox. Then it thinned out, the way it does. They've got their own lives, I told myself. That's natural. But here's the thing I couldn't see at the time. It didn't thin out because they got busy. It thinned out because they got organized. Let me back up, though, and tell you about the land, because the land is the whole rotten heart of this thing. About a year and change ago, a young fella in a shiny car comes rolling up my gravel drive. Kestrel Development, out of Raleigh. Real, polite khakis, one of those quarter-zip sweaters they all wear. Sits down at my kitchen table, Ellie's table, and slides a number across it. An offer on the 11 acres. I'm not going to say the exact figure out loud because it'd like to knock me clean out of my chair, but I'll tell you, It had a comma sitting in a spot I had never once seen a comma in my whole working life. I told him I'd think on it. Truth is, I had no intention of selling. This is my daddy's house. Ellie's rose bushes are out front, the ones she babied every spring, and I've got her resting out back under the big oak, in a spot she picked herself before she got too weak to walk out there. You don't run a bulldozer over that so somebody can build townhouses with a swimming pool nobody uses. But I made a mistake, and it was a bad one. I let that offer slip out at Sunday dinner. You should have seen Gary's face. I have watched a lot of expressions cross that boy's face over 52 years. I had never seen that one. Hunger. That's the only word I've got for it. Pure hunger. Now what I did not know that Sunday, what I only pieced together later, is that Gary was drowning. Triangle Comfort was months behind on everything. He'd borrowed against that fake stone house twice, and there were other debts on top of that. Debts that had nothing to do with heating and air, which I'll get to. Denise and Steve had refinanced so many times they were upside down on the house, the cars, probably the dog. And Kyle, sweet slow Kyle. Kyle owed money to the kind of men you do not want to owe money to. So picture it. There's their daddy, 77 at the time, sitting on 11 acres worth of comma in a brand new spot, plus the hardware money, plus a house that's been paid off since Reagan. And the stubborn old man won't sell. You can see it coming, can't you? Took me a while, and I raised these people. The first sign, and I swear I didn't read it as a sign, was the little questions. Gentle ones. Daddy, you having any trouble keeping your pills straight? Daddy, you seem foggy today. You feeling all right up top? Denise took to carrying a little spiral notebook. I caught her scribbling in it one afternoon at my own kitchen table, and when I asked what she was writing, she smiled and said, "Oh, it's just my grocery list, Daddy." Grocery list. She was writing down every single time I couldn't lay my hands on my reading glasses. Every time I called Steve the wrong name, which honestly, the man is forgettable. That one's on him and not me. And Gary started in with things like, "We just worry about you out here all by yourself. Maybe it's time we sat down and talked about somebody helping you manage things." Manage things. That right there is how they talk when they're coming for you. They wrap it up in worry and hand it to you like a gift. And I'll tell you the part that shames me. For a couple of weeks in there, they nearly had me believing it. That's what still turns my stomach. You get to be my age, your wife's in the ground, and your own children start murmuring that your mind's slipping, and by God, you start to wonder. Am I? I'd lie there at night going, did I leave the burner on Tuesday? Did I can't remember. And the not remembering would scare the daylights out of me, even though half the time I'd remember fine by morning. They got up inside my head. That's the first thing people like that do. They make you doubt your own self, so you'll sit down and go quiet and easy. But then came the Wednesday night. My granddaughter Hannah, Denise's girl. She's 21, over at Wake Tech in the nursing program. And she is the one good apple in the whole barrel, and it pains me to say a thing like that about my own. But it is the gospel truth. Hannah's loved me since she was knee-high, back when I'd let her ring up customers on the register at the store and keep whatever pennies rolled her way. She calls me late, and her voice is coming apart, and she goes, "Papa, I've got to tell you something, and you have to swear you won't tell Mama it came from me." I said, "Honey, breathe. What is it?" And she says they had a meeting over at Uncle Gary's, Mama and Uncle Gary and Uncle Kyle. And there was a man there, a lawyer, in a suit. And Papa, they're saying you're not right in the head anymore. They're going to file something on you, a guardianship, so they can take over your money and the land and all of it. And she said, "Papa, I heard Uncle Gary say it plain. He said once we get a doctor to sign off, it's basically done. The old man can't fight it, and she said she had to get up and leave the room before they saw her crying. I want you to understand what that did to me. You know the feeling when you're coming down dark basement stairs and your foot goes for a step that isn't there? That drop in your belly. It was that. Except it didn't hit bottom. It just kept dropping. My own three. A lawyer. To stand up and call their daddy a crazy old man and strip him of everything he's got while he's still walking around above ground. I sat down in Ellie's chair. I still call it Ellie's chair, and I did not sleep 1 minute that night. Not one. But somewhere around 4 a.m, something shifted in me. The scare drained out, and what came up in its place was mad. Cold mad. The kind that goes real quiet and real patient and starts making a list. Because here's what those three forgot while they sat in Gary's kitchen, counting up their daddy's money, like it was already theirs. They forgot who raised them. They forgot I ran a business for 40 years, and I did not do it by being anybody's fool. Not once. And most of all, they forgot the one thing that was fixing to bury every last one of them. The doctor. They kept saying it, Hannah told me, over and over. Once a doctor signs off. That was the whole hinge of their plan. You can't have a man declared incompetent in North Carolina just because his kids say so at the dinner table. You need a physician. You need medicine to put its name on it. That's the linchpin the whole thing hangs from. And they just flat assumed, that the doctor would be some stranger. Somebody they'd steer me toward. A quick 15-minute visit where the nervous old man forgets the date and draws a crooked clock, and that's that. But I have had the same doctor for 22 years. Dr. Anil Patel, office off Judd Parkway. That man carried me through a gallbladder that near killed me, through Ellie's whole illness, all of it. He sat with me in that hospital room the night she left. Held onto my arm and didn't say a word because there wasn't one to say. Anil Patel is no stranger to me. So the very next morning, 8 o'clock sharp, I'm sitting in his waiting room before they've got the lights all the way on. And I tell him the whole thing, Hannah's call, the notebook, all of it. And I watch his face travel from concerned over to something a good deal harder. And when I finish, he leans back and takes his glasses off and rubs his eyes, and he says, "Real slow, Ray. Let's find out exactly where your mind stands. Not what your children want it to be. Not what you're scared of at 4 a.m. Let's put the actual truth down on paper." So he runs me through the whole works, the memory testing, the cognitive battery, every bit of it. The very same kind of exam they were counting on to prove I was gone. Took the better part of the morning. Draw the clock, repeat the words back, count backward from 100 by sevens, name the date, name the president, all of it. And I need you to hear this next part clear, because this is the hinge. The entire story swings on. I aced it, every single piece. Patel's sitting there tapping his pen, and he looks up and goes, "Ray, I test folks half your age who don't come back looking like this." And then he did a thing I will be thankful for until they lay me down under that oak next to my Ellie. He wrote it up, formal, on his letterhead, with a notary right there. A signed evaluation, dated, laying it out in that flat, careful doctor language, that on this date he examined Raymond Cobble and found him fully oriented, of completely sound mind and judgment, entirely capable of handling his own affairs and his own property. And then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Ray, if anybody, family, lawyer, judge, any soul on this earth tries to say otherwise, you have them call me. I will get up in front of a courtroom and testify to it myself." I walked out of that office into the parking lot, and I stood there next to my old truck in the cold, and I laughed out loud, all by myself. First real laugh I'd had in 2 years, because they built their whole scheme on top of a doctor. They just picked the wrong daddy, with the wrong doctor. But that letter was only the shield. Now I needed something with an edge on it. That same afternoon I drove on into Raleigh to see Sandra Whitfield, estate lawyer downtown. Ellie and I had her draw up our wills years back. Sharp as a tack, that woman. Doesn't waste a breath on you. I spread the whole business across her desk. The guardianship, the land, Hannah's phone call, and I laid Patel's letter right on top of the pile. She read it, set it down, and she smiled at me in a way that made me real glad she was sitting on my side of the table, and not theirs. She says, "Ray, they've made themselves a serious mistake, showing you their hand before they ever moved." She says, "As of right now, today, in the eyes of the law and your own longtime physician, you are 100% competent." And you know what that means? She leaned in over the desk. It means you can do anything you please, with every last thing you own, and they cannot stop you, and once it's done, they cannot undo it. So we got to work, and over the next couple weeks, while my 3 children were off somewhere, sharpening up their little ambush, thinking they had all the time in the world, thinking the poor addled old man was just parked out on Honeycutt Road waiting to get handled, I quietly took my whole life apart and put it back together in a shape they were going to purely hate. First thing, a living trust. Everything I own went into it, the house, the 11 acres, the hardware money, every account, the whole works, into the Raymond Cobble Living Trust, with me as the trustee, in full control, all the way until the day I die. And a trust like that, done tight by somebody the caliber of Sandra, is a stone fortress. A guardianship can't reach into it. It's mine to run and nobody's to touch. Second thing, the power of attorney. See, the old one, from years back, named Gary. Course it did. He's the firstborn. That's just what you do. Well, we tore it right in half. New durable power of attorney, and I put Hannah's name on it. My granddaughter, 21 years old, worth more than the 3 of them stacked on top of each other. And a backup behind her, a professional the bank uses, a neutral party, so it could never fall to Gary or Denise, no matter which way the wind blew. Third thing, and this is the one. This is the one that mattered most. The will. The old will split everything 3 ways down the middle, even the way a decent father does it. We fed it to the shredder, and I stood there and watched the strips come out the bottom. The new one, Hannah's schooling, paid in full, right off the top. A good piece to the hospice out at WakeMed, the ones who were so gentle and so patient with Ellie there at the end. And the land, my daddy's 11 acres, went into the trust to be held. Not sold, not scraped flat, held, with Ellie's roses and Ellie's oak written in, and protected for just as long as the law will let me stretch it. And my 3 children, Gary, Denise, Kyle, $1 apiece. Now Sandra sat me down and explained why you do it that way. You don't just leave a person out entirely, because then they can stand up in front of a judge and boo-hoo about how Daddy forgot me. Daddy was confused. He didn't mean to cut me out. No, sir. You leave them $1 by their full name, spelled right out. So there is no earthly way to claim it was an accident or an oversight. It says, in black ink, notarized, I remembered you just fine. I knew exactly who you were and exactly what you did to me. And I chose the dollar, $1 apiece. I signed all of it on a Thursday. Sandra had her 2 witnesses and the notary standing by, and Patel's competency letter went right into that file, stapled tight against the will, so any judge in Wake County who ever laid eyes on it would see the 2 things dated the same season. This man knew precisely what he was doing, and a doctor of 22 years will swear to it. The trap was set. Now I just had to sit still and let them go on and spring the one they'd built for me. And Lord, did they spring it? The call came from Gary that next Saturday. Warm as pie. Daddy, we're all getting together for a family dinner over at my place tomorrow. We want to sit down with you, talk about the road ahead, make sure you're took care of. There it was again, that same soft phrasing folks reach for right before they slide the knife on in. And I said, why, that sounds real nice, son. I'd love to come. What can I carry over? You know what I carried over. I got to Gary's around 1 on Sunday. The fake stone, the dry boat in the driveway. I come through the door and there they all are. Gary, Denise, Kyle, Steve hanging back by the refrigerator like he does. And sitting up at the head of the table, at my son's own dining table, is a man in a gray suit I have never once seen in my life. Slick, silver watch, Denton Halloran. Come to find out, their lawyer. And I played it. I'll admit I got a small, mean pleasure out of it. The Lord can take that up with me later. I shuffled in slow. I said, well now, who's our company today? And I let them steer me down into the chair like a good old dog. And Gary starts in. And you can tell he rehearsed the thing in the mirror. Daddy, we love you. And it's because we love you that we've all been noticing how you've been slipping. The memory, the confusion. You out there all alone in that big empty house. And we've been just worried sick. And we all feel like it's time somebody stepped in and helped you manage your affairs before something bad happens. Before you go and make a mistake you can't take back. Before somebody out there takes advantage of you. Somebody takes advantage of me. He said that, straight to my face, with a lawyer he'd hired to take advantage of me, sitting 3 feet away. And then Halloran slides a folder across the table toward me, smooth as anything. Mr. Cobble, your children have started a guardianship proceeding, purely out of love and concern. And if you'll just put your signature right here, granting your son Gary authority over your finances, we can spare everybody the stress of a court process, and you won't have to worry yourself about a single thing ever again. Just sign right here. And I looked around that table nice and slow. Denise couldn't get her eyes up off the tablecloth. Kyle was staring a hole in the carpet like a whipped pup. And Gary had that hunger up in his face again, leaning in at me, pen already uncapped, holding it out across the folder. And I let it all sit quiet a second. Real quiet. And then I said, well now, before I go signing anybody's papers, I brought a couple little things of my own today, seeing as how we're all being so loving and so honest. And I reached down into the manila envelope I'd carried in under my arm. The one, not a one of them, gave a second look, because what in the world's an old man got in an envelope? And I took out Dr. Patel's letter, and I slid it back across the table at Halloran, nice and slow, the exact same way he'd slid his at me. And I said, that right there is from my physician, Dr. Anil Patel, 22 years my doctor, notarized 2 weeks back. Go on and read it out loud, counselor. Read it to the whole table. You should have watched that lawyer's face travel down that page. Just fell right off the bone. He didn't read it out loud. He set it down real gentle, like it had gone hot in his hand. So I read the good part for him. I said, it says I'm of completely sound mind, fully competent, fully able to run my own affairs. Tested top to bottom 2 weeks ago by a doctor who's known me 22 years, and who says, and I'm giving you his exact words, he will testify to it in any courtroom in this state. The room went dead. You could hear the ice maker dump a tray in the freezer, and Gary, bless his heart, Gary panics and blurts out, Daddy, that don't mean nothing. That's just one doctor. We can get another one. and Halloran actually reached over and put a hand on the boy's arm to hush him. Because Halloran, being a lawyer and not a fool, he already knew. He knew the guardianship was stone dead the second that notary stamp hit his table. You do not win an incompetency case against a competent man who's got a 22-year doctor lined up ready to swear. It was over, just that quick, but I was not finished. Not hardly. This here was the part I'd driven over for. I said, now, since we're all sitting here so nice and cozy, let me go on and save everybody some time and some of this fella's hourly rate, because I know good and well what this is really about. It ain't my memory. It never was. It's my land. And I pulled out the second paper. I said 2 weeks ago I put every single thing I own into a trust. The house, the 11 acres, the accounts, all of it. And I am the trustee. Me. Not one of you touches a dime while I'm alive. A guardianship can't crawl in and get at it. It is done. And it is airtight. Sandra Whitfield built it. Some of you might recall Sandra. Denise made a little sound down in her throat. And I said, and while I had the pen out, I redid my will. And I turned, and I looked right at Gary. I said, all 3 of you are in it. Don't you worry. You're each of you getting $1. You ever in your life watch 3 grown people do the same arithmetic at the same second and land square on 0? Kyle's mouth just dropped open. Denise went white, then red. Then she came at me, Daddy, you don't mean that. We only did this because we love you. We were trying to protect you. And I said, Denise, honey, I found the notebook. I know all about the grocery list. Every time your daddy lost his glasses, you had it wrote down. So don't you sit there and tell me one more time about protecting me. She didn't have a thing to say back to that. And then Gary. And this is the moment. This is where the boys stood up and showed the whole table exactly what he'd turned into. Gary slaps his hand down flat on the wood and he hollers, "You can't do this! That land's worth more than that hardware store ever pulled in 20 years. That's our inheritance, you selfish old." And he caught himself. But every soul at that table heard right where the sentence was headed. And I stood up, 78 years old, and I come up out of that chair straight as I've stood in a decade. I said, our inheritance. Son, I'm not dead yet. I'm just not as gone as you bet the whole farm I was. And you lost that bet. I said, you carried a lawyer into your own dining room to go tell a judge your daddy's lost his mind, so you could run a dozer over your own mother's grave and clear off debts you figured I'd never hear about. Triangle Comfort's 3 months behind, Gary. And I know about the other money too, the kind that don't have a thing to do with heating and air. You reckoned I ran a store for 40 years and can't read a room, or read a man. You reckoned wrong on both. He didn't have one word. Not a one of them did. Now here's the thing about Denise and Kyle, because they weren't the ringleader, but they sat at that table too, and they made their choices, and choices have a bill that comes due. I turned to Kyle first, and I said, son, I know somebody's got their claws in you over money. I've known it a while, and I know that's a piece of why you went along with your brother. And if you'd have just come to me, just walked up my drive and told me the truth, I'd have helped you, same as I've helped you your whole life. But you sat quiet in Gary's kitchen while the two of them planned to lock your own daddy out of his own life. So you get your dollar right along with him. And I pray to God it buys you a mirror to look in. And Kyle put his face in his hands and cried. Actually cried. Shoulders going and everything. And I'll tell you, the daddy part of me, the part that never does quit no matter what, it wanted to walk around that table and take that boy's head against my chest like when he was small. But I didn't. Some things you don't get to hug your way back out of. And then Denise, I let her stew a good long second. And I said, your girl, your Hannah. That child has got more decency in her little finger than the three of you have gotten your whole bodies put together. And she's the reason I found out in time. So you go on and chew on this, Denise. Hannah's the one in my will, and you're the one holding $1. And someday, when you're old and quiet, you're going to work out exactly why that is. And I picked up my 2 papers off the table, and I put my hat back on my head, and I looked over at that slick lawyer, and I said, "You send your bill to Gary." And I walked on out the front door, got in my old Silverado, backed out slow past that boat that's never touched water, and I did not cry. I want you to know that. I got about 2 miles down the road, and I pulled into that Sheets, the one sitting right where I bought my first fishing license 60-some years ago. And I put the truck in park, and I let out a breath I swear I'd been holding since the phone rang on Wednesday night. Now you'd think that'd be the end of it. It mostly was, but the fallout took a while to roll all the way downhill, and I got to watch a good bit of it. They filed nothing, not one paper. Halloran dropped them as clients inside a week because there was no case. There was never going to be a case. Once a competent man moves his own money out in broad daylight with his own doctor standing behind him, Gary's the one I heard about the most. And I'll be straight with you. I didn't go looking. It just came to me the way things do in a town this size. Triangle Comfort folded that spring. I ran into his old parts supplier at the feed store, fella I've known 30 years, and he told me Gary'd left him hanging on $11,000 in change and wouldn't return a call. Then the base boat went. I know that for a fact because Denise's Steve, of all people, sold it for him at a lot out on 401, and I drove past and saw it sitting there with a price sticker in the windshield. And God help me, I'm not proud of it, but I felt something warm go through me looking at that boat with a sticker on it. Last I heard, the fake stone house had a sign in the yard too. He reckoned my land was going to bail him out. It's going to sit green and wild with Ellie's roses on it long after he's gone, and there's not a thing he can do about it, and he knows it. Denise mailed me a letter, 3 pages, both sides, her handwriting all cramped up. 3 whole pages about how deeply I'd wounded her, how she may never recover from what I did at that dinner. 3 pages. And you want to know how many times the word sorry showed up in them? Not once. Not one time. I read it standing at the kitchen counter, and then I folded it back up and put it in the drawer with the takeout menus, and I haven't thought on it much since. Kyle, I don't rightly know. He moved, somewhere down toward Fayetteville, is what I hear. He hasn't called, and I haven't chased him. Of the 3, he's the one I still ache over a little, late at night. But aching over somebody and trusting them again are 2 different roads. And at my age, I've only got so much road left to walk. That dinner was about 8 months back now. But Hannah comes out every Sunday, sits right at my kitchen table, the same table where the developer first slid that number at me. And she tells me all about nursing school and the professors she can't stand. And I tell her about her grandmother, about my Ellie, things she was too little to remember. She helps me tend Ellie's roses out front. And last Sunday, the 2 of us put in a whole new row of the yellow ones. The ones Ellie loved best. That girl walks across the stage in the spring. And I am going to be right there in the front row, hollering like a fool, with a program rolled up in my fist. The developer called back, by the way. Come up on his offer. I told him the very same thing I'd told him the first time. It is not for sale. Some things a comma just can't buy. My daddy raised that house up out of red dirt with his own hands. My wife is asleep under that oak. And when it comes my time to go lie down next to her, that land drops into the trust, and it stays green, and it stays wild, and it stays mine. And there is not a townhouse going up over Ellie's roses. Not while I've got breath in me, and not 1 minute after, because I made good and certain of that on a Thursday in a lawyer's office in Raleigh. The house is quiet now, real quiet. And you'd figure a man my age alone, his own children turned on him like that, you'd figure that kind of quiet would be the loneliest sound there is. It isn't. I'll tell you what it is. It's peace. I sleep now, all the way through like I hadn't slept in 2 years, because I know down to my bones exactly who I am. And I've got a letter in a drawer signed by a good man that says the same, and there is not one single soul left in my life pretending to fret over me while they're pacing off the property for the sale. So let me leave you with this. Whoever you are, wherever it is you're listening from tonight, growing old is not the same thing as growing helpless. And being a kind man your whole life through doesn't mean you have to sit real still and let yourself get robbed at the end of it. Not by strangers, and not even by your own blood. You can love your children with your whole heart and still refuse to let them take you down. And both of those things can live inside the same chest at the same time. I know it for a fact, because they're both living in mine right now, tonight. And those folks out there who count you out, the ones who look at the gray hair and the slow walk and decide in their heads that you're finished, that you'll never see it coming. Let them think it. Let them go right on thinking it, all the way up to the day you reach down and set that envelope on the table. You take care of yourselves out there, and go on and call somebody who truly loves you. Tonight, I mean that.